No, that's true, but I think we are going to see quite a lot of sort of European-style regulation. Obviously, California has this new set of rules coming in January of 2020, and that's basically a copy and paste of GDPR from Europe. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see, under any future Democratic administration, a GDPR-style law introduced across at a federal level.
Tom, I'm glad you just brought up California, because also getting away from the FANGs, we're seeing regulation that could change the picture very much for Lyft and Uber in terms of how they classify their drivers. Where do you think that's going, and how critical is that for those companies?
Well, what we see with all of these companies is they're basically taking advantage of regulatory grey areas. We saw the same with Airbnb as well. And ultimately, they have to, they get away with it for a while, but ultimately they do, and we see this happening all around the world with Uber and Lyft, and we saw it with Airbnb as well. They do have to, and in fact it's in their interest for there to be clear rules eventually, and those rules do generally end up not being quite as strict as the rules that govern the incumbents that they pushed aside. So there's some sort of essentially compromise going on here. You barge into a grey area, and instead of there being no rules at all, you end up with sort of slightly lighter regulation. I think that's probably where we're ending up.
Mike, it does seem like there is so much broad-based, and it almost doesn't matter what political party you look at. There's so much broad-based kind of consensus that the big tech companies need to be under more regulatory scrutiny, whether it's here in the U.S., whether it's in the U.K., whether it's in Europe right now. Do you think, and maybe this is a crazy question to ask, but do you think that we could actually see a situation in which all of these different regions, different countries come together and basically map out a rules of the road more broadly for big tech?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we've seen Facebook get hammered for the past year and a half in particular. And one of Mark Zuckerberg's strategies has actually been calling for exactly what you said, which is sort of a broader regulation of all internet companies, or really all tech companies. I think part of it's mostly, strategic to deflect the specific attention on Facebook, which they would love to sort of spread that pain around a little bit. But I do think the point that he makes is interesting because he's sort of seeing further down the road. Tech has had maybe a good 15 to 20 years of no regulation and real oversight as to what it looks like. So if they can insert themselves now into the conversation, it sort of goes to what Tom's point is, which is like, look, you're not going to get the ultra strict version of what these rules are going to look like, and you're not going to get the sort of come what may version of self-governance. So you get something in the middle that everyone can live with after a while.
Well, and it's worth pointing out that also Facebook benefits from these sorts of rules. GDPR entrenches the position of the big companies because they are better placed to cope with a big regulatory burden. And we've seen the same in in other sectors as well, like banking, where it's important that we have regulations, but that actually makes it harder for new companies to come along and displace the incumbents.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so they're totally at the table. Well,